Hi, my name is Corinne Goldberg. I'll start with a brief introduction of my background before we dive into the content today. So I'm based in New York City, and my career so far has spanned both management consulting and enterprise software. Right now, I work for Google as a data transformation lead for Google Ads. And that means I spend a lot of time working with companies to find ways to optimize their media and their advertising dollars on Google technology. Now, this is a talk that I delivered for the Google Women's Network last year. And I think it's interesting material for women and anyone really who want to go after their dreams but can't quite get inspired to do it. I hope that sharing my story will perhaps draw some inspiration and at the very least, leave you feeling ready to get after it. So let's begin. Now, I want you to take a moment wherever you are in the world to close your eyes. I want you to visualize the last time that you chose to do something really tough. Now, I'm not talking about your boss asking you to deliver a presentation. I'm talking about a decision that you made to take on a tremendous, gritty, next to impossible challenge. Now, if you're like me, I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast today, let alone any sort of difficult project or task that I've elected to do recently. So if you can't remember, if you can't think of it, if it doesn't come to your mind, I get it. And you're not alone. And I think you're not alone because it's pretty rare that we regularly and voluntarily choose to do hard things. And that reason is probably pretty obvious. It doesn't feel good to do hard stuff. It can be painful, scary, uncomfortable. And I think we as women and humans, we generally want to feel good. We want to feel happy. We want to feel safe. So we know that lots of people avoid difficult situations. But what if I told you that those uncomfortable situations that you're avoiding or ignoring are preventing you from becoming the person that you're meant to be? Now let that sink in. What if those uncomfortable situations, experiences that you're avoiding, that you're ignoring, are preventing you from becoming the person that you are meant to be? So I want to go a bit deeper into this today and talk a little bit more about this uncomfortable balancing act between growth and stagnation. I believe that doing challenging things, both intentionally and frequently, helped me realize my potential. And I think it can for you too. Now, let's take a moment to think about the fact that wanting to be uncomfortable isn't inherently bad. It's actually biological. It means that in modern society, many of us are living in a comfort crisis. Too much time being very comfortable. Biologically, we are drawn to experiences that help us feel safe, protected, because that's what our ancestors craved. That's what they hoped for. That's what they aspired to find. So it's biological, but it means that, we're living in this period in life where we're comfortable, and it's very difficult to get out of that space. Now, I would argue that the magic really happens when we finally decide to take that leap, when we get uncomfortable. So I want to talk about my journey to become a cycling instructor. This is my personal experience facing fear, facing self-doubt, and finally getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I'll start by saying that becoming a cycling instructor was the hardest physical and mental challenge of my life so far. And I feel like I've done a lot of crazy things. I've stretched myself professionally in many ways, but becoming a cycling instructor has been the most challenging experience in my life. Now we'll take a few steps back to my childhood. I want to talk a little bit about what fitness and physical exercise has been like for me. Ever since I was a little girl, fitness has been a huge part of my life. I loved going to the gym with my mom, my friends. I loved hiking. I loved biking. I grew up in Southern California. And so fitness and exercise in the outdoors was a huge part of my life. Now I've been taking cycling classes for as long as I can remember. My mom bought me my first pair of Shimano cycling shoes, which, I wore more than my regular sneakers. I was always going to a cycling class. It was called spinning at the time, before indoor cycling was cool. And I would go to these cycling classes with my mom or by myself or with friends, and I would always dream about teaching. I would fantasize about getting up on that podium and teaching a class, preparing an incredible playlist, and motivating a group of riders to exercise, to climb hills, to sprint, and to feel really, really good after a really intense workout. That's what I always fantasized about. And about 2 years ago, I was sitting in my bedroom during the pandemic. It was 2020. I was single at the time. I was living in New York City, where I still live today. I was living with one of my best friends in a really great apartment in Chelsea. I had just moved to New York after spending virtually all of my 20s in London, which was incredible. That's definitely for another story. So all things considered, I was pretty comfortable. I bought a spin bike and I would ride in my bedroom. Gym's closed. There was nowhere to exercise, in a physical space outside of my apartment. So, I would practice teaching to an empty room, hours after hours. My roommate thought I was crazy. I bought a PA system and a microphone. I tried to set up a virtual cycling studio in my bedroom and record classes and upload them to Instagram, just sort of fantasizing, about what it would be like if I could actually teach. No one looked at those Instagrams, and, it was really just for me to have some fun and to think about, mentally put myself in that space and think about what it would feel like. And then one day, after practicing for many months in my bedroom, I thought, I've been thinking about doing this for so long. Why haven't I done it already? Why haven't I become a cycling instructor? What's really been holding me back? Now, for any of you who have taken a Peloton or a SoulCycle class or a Barry's class or, any class at a boutique fitness studio or at a gym, probably understand me when I say it's really intimidating, right? These are incredible instructors. Physically, they look like machines. They probably spend hours at the gym. This is their life. And, I'm not an athlete, I thought to myself. I didn't think at the time that I had the time with my demanding job at Google, to look like they did and to teach. So at that point, I was in this comfort crisis where I was avoiding pursuing my passion that I'd been thinking about for years. It was more comfortable to sit in the back of a class, to sit in my bedroom, to do workouts at home. It was more comfortable to avoid putting myself in any sort of spotlight, to tell myself, I'm not an athlete. I would never be able to become a cycling instructor. No way. That's not me. And I think what changed the game for me was that over time, I saw some of my favorite instructors and friends become corporate bosses. There is a Peloton instructor named Robin Arzon, and she used to be a corporate lawyer, and now she made the pivot into cycling, and she's an incredible Peloton instructor. So she was someone that I always looked up to, and I was inspired by her journey from corporate into Peloton. One of my good friends, Jenny, is an epidemiologist at Pfizer, and she teaches cycling on the side of her day job. There is another fitness instructor, cycling instructor, and influencer named Hannah Rose, who is, apart from teaching cycling, a communications and PR consultant. And she has an incredible cycling studio in Canada and a podcast about cycling, fitness, and wellness. So there were people, women in my life and around me who inspired me. And I thought to myself, maybe I'm not going to look like Robin Arzon, but if Robin can be a corporate lawyer and now teach spinning, maybe I can too. If Jenny can be a scientist and a spin instructor, maybe I can too. And if Hannah can teach full time and run a podcast and a PR firm, I can too. I had this epiphany and I drew this inspiration from incredibly powerful and successful and motivating women and people around me who were stepping outside of their comfort zone, who were realizing their dreams, and who were making it happen. And so that's what I did too. I always tell my classes now, all it takes to get up this hill, for example, is one step forward, one foot in front of the other until you reach the top. And that's how I approached becoming a cycling instructor. I started by taking a cycling certification. I recorded myself teaching in my bedroom, practiced again and again. Can you imagine, being in your bedroom alone, recording yourself over and over and over again until you get it perfect. I use social media as a way to start building my brand and make new relationships in the fitness industry because I work for a technology company and I knew no one at the time in fitness. So I started a cycling Instagram account and I uploaded the recordings of myself teaching these small classes to Instagram, and I thought that was a way to hold myself accountable. I went on a social media binge, essentially. I would find instructors I liked and I would DM them and ask them for some help or for some ideas, for some feedback to try to get an audition at some cycling studio. And, this was still during the pandemic, so there were very sporadic, locations open across New York City. I knew at that point I needed to build a personal brand. So I took some fitness photos in my bedroom. I would write down motivational quotes that I heard that, inspired me, that I felt would be impactful should I land, a job and be teaching on the podium. So I just became, obsessed and motivated and excited. I just wanted to start somewhere. And I started this whole process from my bedroom. But ultimately, I knew that I needed to get into the studio and make this dream a reality. So finally, after stalking enough people and practicing for hours, I landed an audition at Cycle Bar, which is a boutique cycling studio. Now, this is where I want to talk about the really hard stuff, because practicing in your bedroom and connecting with people online is hard, right? But it's not impossible. Now, getting an actual audition for me was absolutely terrifying for 3 reasons. Number one, imagine I go to a Cycle Bar audition and I see 50 people in the room, 50 cycling instructors and aspiring cycling instructors in the room auditioning for 4 spots. All of them were either already instructors or actors or actresses whose stage presence was next level. Here I am, typically crouched in front of a laptop for 8 hours a day, and I'm looking at these actors and actresses with gorgeous posture, with stage presence, with confidence. So I was terrified. Number 2, I had no idea how to ride to the beat, and the audition was 2 minutes. I had 2 minutes to prove myself. This is rhythm riding after all, so every beat needs to be exact. And number 3, I had never used a mic before. It sounds so silly, right? You think that you might be comfortable getting on stage and using a mic. What could be so challenging or hard about that? But it's a completely different experience putting on a mic and a mic pack and a belt and getting onto a podium with bright lights and getting on a bike and teaching and motivating and being energetic. It's essentially a performance. So for those 3 reasons, I was absolutely terrified at this audition. And coming out of that audition, I completely bombed it. I was awful. And I remember over the following 3-month period, I had several more auditions and I completely bombed them. They were at the same studio and I felt so defeated. I was so close to giving up. I think at that moment, I thought that if I put in the effort, I should be getting results, right? Effort in equals results out. And, that's not what happened for me. And I think what stands out for me on my journey getting comfortable with being really uncomfortable is that when you have a hard experience, I think you really need to sit in the discomfort for a while. And that's really hard. We want instant success. We want minimal effort to produce maximum results. And that's not typically how life works. And for me, certainly, that's not how this journey to become a cycling instructor worked. And I think those failed auditions were a completely pivotal moment in my journey. I remember looking at myself in the mirror after my second audition, and I told myself, I'm not going to fail again. I will get this done. I had that gritty determination that I had to make this work. I was in it and there was no going back and I loved it. And I knew that I needed to do everything in my power to accomplish this goal that felt impossible. So fast forward with a few more auditions at other studios and lots of really incredible champions along the way who helped advocate for me, who coached me, who spent hours of their own personal time helping me get better and better and better and build confidence. There were lots of bumps along the way, but I am so proud that finally I managed to land my first job as a cycling instructor at Chelsea Piers Fitness in New York City, which is an incredible gym, a couple of different locations around the city. Wonderful member community. It was the most incredible place to start my other career as a cycling instructor. Shortly after that, I landed a job at Equinox Fitness, which is another incredible brand with many locations around the city, nationally and internationally. And I now teach 3 to 4 classes a week. I do corporate rides. I'm an instructor and riding for Cycle for Survival, which is Equinox's flagship philanthropy event that takes place annually. So I feel at this point, I've really realized my passion and my goal. And it felt at first completely unattainable. And I look at myself now in photos and videos, and I'm so proud of the instructor and the woman that I've become through this experience. So for me, becoming a cycling instructor was my antidote to the comfort crisis. It was tough, but I learned that if I get uncomfortable, I will grow. It will take time. There will be ups and downs, but I will grow. And it's given me a new passion, a new creative outlet, a new community. And for that, I'm so grateful. So if there is a perspective that I would like to offer you, it's that I think that our potential, your potential, is so much greater than your limitations. And if you've been thinking about doing something, if you've been thinking about accomplishing that big, scary goal of yours, if you keep making up excuses, know that number 1, you're not alone. And number 2, it's never too late, and there is never a better time than right now to lean into those scary opportunities in front of you, to get uncomfortable, and to go after the woman and the person that you want to become. I promise it will pay off. So thank you so much. If you have any questions or you'd like to chat, please connect with me offline.